So, hi everyone. I hope everyone's having a great summer. This is our August webinar. We're here with Xeikon. Xeikon is one of our newest partners here at Graphic Arts Alliance. And Xeikon is an equipment manufacturer that covers a couple of different segments of printing, including label printing, but they also have printing for commercial printing applications as well as packaging. We're here today with Mark Pomerantz, who is the Sales and Marketing Director at Xeikon. And he's going to kick it off by talking a little bit about how to get into the label printing market. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Mark. And if you have any questions, please just hold them or put them into chat. We will definitely address those at the end. So Mark, without further ado. Mark, you're muted.
Okay.
You're good. There we go.
Okay. Well, hello everyone, and Wendy, thank you for the opportunity to present to your membership at Graphic Arts Alliance. We're excited about this opportunity and being part of Graphic Arts Alliance, and I hope that I just didn't pick the wrong presentation. I created an edited one, so anyway, it'll be okay if I did. So thank you again, everyone. And as Wendy said, today we wanted to discuss what is happening in the label market. What are some of the trends? What are some of the applications that are growing for people who are looking to enter the market? What does that look like? And what are the various options available for you? What are the various segments that can be addressed? And for those of you already in the marketplace, what are the opportunities for expansion and what are those growth markets? And same thing, what is required to enter on that basis? So first, let's just talk a little bit about digitally printed labels as a market segment. It's been around for 15 years. It's not new. There has been a relatively low adoption rate over the first 10 or 12 years. And when I say relatively low, it's based on the percentage or scope and size of the total market for manufactured labels of all types, and how many of them are produced digitally. So for those of you more familiar in the commercial market, you know that it also started with a slow adoption rate, but moved quickly through the early and mid 2000s to the point where it's, in some applications, it's actually become the primary. So no different for labels, but maybe a little bit slower overall. When you look at the percentage of the total market, that's starting to change. As I mentioned here, it's been increasing significantly since 2020 and really 2021, right? Because of all of the various changes and during lockdowns, and then safety requirements around food and shopping related, etc. There was a lot of remanufacturing of labels and packaging for a period of 2 years that was really a spike. And the growth of the market continues, not at the same rate as those 2 years, but still significant growth. And the market is, as far as digital manufacturing of labels, digital printing, it's expanding to include different types of labels. So most people are familiar with self-adhesive labels. There's all different ways and types of labeling that is required. We'll touch on that later in the conversation. And then last bullet point at a high level, food safety, as I just touched on a minute ago, it's becoming more and more important. So unlike Europe, where things are mostly regulated or strictly regulated around this, in the US, it's not, but it's becoming more and more regulated. There's more attempts to regulate it. And there's also more of a groundswell coming up on the consumer product side that's requiring label manufacturers to adhere to certain levels of food safety. We'll touch on some of that. So I know we're primarily going to speak about labels today, but I can't be here and not talk a little bit about packaging. So we'll touch on that, right? And same thing, digital printed packaging has been around for a while. a lower and slower adoption rate by far when compared to labels. Uh, and primarily most digital print applications in the packaging market up until the last few years has been aimed at folding carton applications. And there's always been some both technical and economic barriers that make it difficult for the level of investment that's been needed for digital print. That's starting to change, but that's at least in the folding carton aspect. I think that's going to be around for a while, but that's definitely going into the rearview mirror when it comes to packaging, because right now the focus is on flexible packaging. Over the last several years, there is a very rapid growth rate in all aspects of flexible packaging, and thus digital print for flexible packaging is no exception to that. In fact, if anything, it's leading the growth rate for print of flexible packaging in various segments. Again, we'll touch on that in a little bit. In this case, for flexible packaging, because a large majority of it is for food, it's rapidly becoming a mandatory requirement. So something to be fully aware of if you are looking at entering this market or if you're in the process of entering it. So just a few kind of definitions of the various labels that are out there in the market, because like anything, all labels are not made alike, and all labels are not labels in the same way all books or direct mail is not one umbrella. So these are 5 different areas that we wanted to touch on that I think are very relevant for those looking for digital print applications within the label market. Self-adhesive labels, of course, is the vast majority, and it's well known, and most of it is pretty straightforward. It occupies the majority of labels that are produced in the US. Then you have the segment of durable labels, and those are typically in industrial applications. So on batteries, inside of cars, and on electrical equipment, and in places where the durability is not helpful but mandatory. So these are really tough environments that a label has to be able to survive in. Uh, Heat transfer labeling. This is something that's been around for a long time in the conventional world, but it's really picking up in digital. It's potentially a replacement for either screen printing or dye sublimation in particular. And as anyone knows, those are very labor intensive, not necessarily real fast and productive or inexpensive ways to produce products. So there's some options there in heat transfer labeling. As a part of that, I'm mentioning it separately here, but ultimately I'll talk about them as one. In-mold labeling is also a transfer process and technology that's also gaining strength now as both either a partner or an alternative to heat transfer. And then we have, I think everyone's aware of embellished labels. So the ability to embellish labels has been around for a long time, but or at least, let's say, the past 10 years, but it's been an expensive, cumbersome, multi-step process with some levels of limitations and limitations on success. So we'll provide a little bit of an update on that as well, too. So let's talk about each one of those. Self-adhesive labels. This is what most people think of when they think labels and see labels, a whole bunch of labels printed across the web, just in continuous roll format, and that's mostly true. So these, as I mentioned, are the most common labels that are manufactured. It's also the most competitive market because you have low barrier to entry from the equipment side, and there's just so much demand out there at various levels and online ordering, et cetera. A lot of people enter the market with existing equipment like a wide format printer, or maybe look at an entry level label printer as well too. That's more dedicated. These can really be defined as commodity products, a lot of them. For some people, that's great. For some people, that's not, right? So, but a commodity competition is pretty much as explained there. It can be difficult, and it doesn't necessarily lead to the highest margins. Now, having said all of that, some labels can be very high value labels. So how do you determine, distinguish between the two, and which areas would you enter the market? We'll talk about that a little bit as well. Durable labels, as I mentioned, really in industrial applications. It can be on batteries, like we said, or automotive, all types of household equipment, industrial warehouse related equipment, etc. That's a big application for durable, but also things like HBA products, health and beauty, require durable labels as well too. So you see the example of the shampoo labels that are on there as a good example. Durable labels can also be produced in the same way as small signage is. It can also be floor graphics. For the most part, the digital print technology that's used for durable labels is UV inkjet, because the ink is cured, UV cured, just like you might be familiar with on an offset or a flexo press. And thus it is very durable. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to be scratched or damaged as easily, and you don't have to put a coating or a laminate on it, which would probably not hold up well under some of the challenging conditions that these labels are in. So UV inkjet is the vast majority of how durable labels are produced. Heat transfer, HCl, in-mold, IML, you might have heard both of those. And this is a very broad area, so we can't cover all that ground, but I'll just try and cover a few. We have industrial heat transfer, and most of that are pails. And it's not most people are not thinking of pails as objects to be printed on, but they're actually very popular as not just in Home Depot and Lowe's, etc., but for giveaways, for small companies, there's a lot of applications. This pails market is really growing. And as far as for Xeikon, it's probably our largest segment within heat transfer, and maybe even within labels all across the board, because the volumes typically are very high for anyone who's doing this. So that's the main application on the industrial side. There are others. And then on promotional products, mugs, drinkware, things that are obviously difficult to print on, that in the past, for the most part, have been either screen printed or more recently, maybe dye sublimation, which is a long process with a lot of ovens and a lot of people and a lot of printers and a lot of film, etc. Now you have an opportunity to print on one substrate, transfer it directly to the other, to the final substrate, and eliminate a lot of labor and costs involved. I think cell phone cases was one of the first really popular ones about 10 years ago for promotional heat transfer products as well too. And then we have embellished labels. Now, embellishments has been getting a lot of notoriety within the digital print world over the past couple of years. Embellishment products, presses and printers have been around for a long time, starting with Scodex and others like that, and MGI more recently. But in this past year, and we'll get to it with Xeikon, there are some new changes or options that are available that are definitely making embellishment more accessible, more economic, more efficient, and thus more available for the end customers. So in the case of labels, wine labels is definitely leading the way for their demand for embellishments. But the food and flexible packaging and health and beauty aids products, those are also coming on strong regarding demand for embellished labels. Okay, now let's talk about just what are the different types of solutions to be able to produce digital printed labels for you. So let's just segment the market a little bit in a couple of categories, and let's start with, well, what is the volume or the amount of labels that have to be produced, maybe even the intricacy of it, and what kind of finishing requirements. So based on that, I've segmented this into three categories: entry level, which of course are low volume, typically are self-adhesive labels only. Then there's a medium to higher level of label manufacturing. Of course, that's the most common, at least in the total volume of what's produced. Entry level is probably most common in number of locations that do it. But medium and higher level labels requires more integration, more finishing, more capabilities, different types of coating, cutting, die cutting, etc. And so that's usually goes beyond what an entry level printer can do for labels. And then we have a category of high volume labels. Of course, for the most part, most of those are still done by Flexo, but more and more is being done on digital. That does require a higher level of press than what has mostly been in the market. And I think I touch on that on the next slide, what the status is of those. And then in the types of segments, we have, as I mentioned, industrial, durables, HTL, heat transfer, IML. It's important to know if you're going to want to produce these type of labels. Obviously, you need to match it up with the right type of platform, digital print platform that includes not just the printing, but also the finishing and also the proper media for it. So there's a knowledge aspect to that. And then when you look at the various technologies that are out there in the printing industry, we can't get away from the toner versus inkjet comparison, no matter where we go. So we have the same thing here for labels, but in this case, it's typically not aqueous inkjet like that is similar to what is used in commercial print. But as I mentioned earlier, it's UV inkjet. So you have toner products, you have UV inkjet products. There are one or two people moving in with aqueous inkjet, another announcement recently. And so it's coming, but it's going to address a certain segment of labels over time. And in the same way it took years for commercial inkjet to get to the point where it's at now, I think we'll see the same thing in the label market. It's going to take a little time. And then there are hybrid presses out there. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this because I might be a little too opinionated, but what it is just combines digital with a Flexo station, and at least in theory allows you to be able to get the best of both worlds. And there are options for hybrid presses, of course. And just very quickly in packaging, when you look at the applications, folding cartons, I talked about that a little bit, lightweight non-corrugated ones. So these would be for candy or pharmaceuticals, things like that. And then in and then you have bags, flexible packaging, and corrugated. So these are just what some of the different segments are. They all have different requirements, both from who your customer is, what type of equipment you would need, and what type of finishing and die cutting, et cetera, that you would need as well too. So I'll just pick out one, and that's flexible packaging to talk about today. I'll just touch on it. It's not that dissimilar from label printing, but it is definitely the fastest growing segment in all of digital print, without a doubt. And there's a lot of talk about it. It's been around for a while. We've been doing it for several years. We have several customers who've been using our equipment for flexible packaging for 2 or 3 years. But it's really taking off now, and it's taking off in volume and interest and requirements and applications. The largest contributor to that is cannabis and what's happening around the country regarding cannabis. And so virtually all of that is going out in flexible packaging. Of course, there's a big shift from food for the food applications, particularly pet food, but really all kinds of food, to move that out of boxes and into flexible packaging. And the types of flexible packaging are considered either pouches or bags. Same type of thing here. It's important to understand if you want to start to do certain types of packaging work, where do you start and what type of solutions are out there for you? In the case of packaging, there's really not any entry-level capabilities. Of course, there are things that can do it. You can print a box on a wide format inkjet printer. So I don't think we need to advise anybody about that. But if you're really looking for production solutions, you immediately move up to the medium and higher level. And in those cases, when you're looking at what's out there and available for you, you really have to pick your application, right? It's not, in the case of packaging, unlike, let's say, labels or other commercial work, it's not quite as simple to just say, I want to do 2 or 3 or 4 different types of packaging on one digital print platform. It's really best to pick your application and build your process and your platform around that. There are some higher volume digital devices that have been introduced and being developed, whether it's coming from HP or KBA, Durst together. That's happening. That addresses just really a very high end of the market that would have to compete against big offset presses. So I think it's a kind of it's a wait and see situation there for how successful that will be in the marketplace. When you're looking at platforms to do folding carton, that's all about how heavy and thick the media is. That's probably the most important feature. You'll need to know run lengths because you're competing against offset, and there's a very established cost of manufacturing and already in there for that. And of course, finishing is typically not something you would find outside of a folding carton manufacturing facility. So there can be some big investments with that as well too. Lightweight boxes, I like to compare that to postcard printing. It's not all that different. You just fold it and die cut it differently than you do a postcard, but from the printing aspect of it, it's very similar. In the case of flexible, this is really an industrial solution, and many of the much of the criteria that is really important has to do with food safety and barrier protection, et cetera, and things like that, because you're really protecting one level between you and the food, right, is the package. And then the pouch making itself is a significant investment, and of course, very definitive on this is what it does, right? It's not like something from Hunkler that can do books, it can do direct mail, it can do a whole bunch of different things. A pouch making line is for pouch making, and that's pretty much it. So some very dedicated requirements if you're going to be in the pouch making flexible market segment. Okay, so that was hopefully seen as a objective, somewhat at least, perspective on the marketplace as it relates to digital print. So where does Xeikon participate in that? And so if you don't mind, I'll take a few minutes to do that. Just from a history perspective, we were there in the early days at the very beginning to help create this market for digital print for packaging 15 years ago. So all that really means, as far as anyone else is concerned, is that we have a lot of experience and we've been through all of the growth aspects and development that's been required for a lot of this. So we have a lot of experience and we understand the market applications and the various differences between them. One thing that is unique about us, we are the only provider that offers both a dry toner and UV inkjet. So for labels, if you're out looking for what is the best investment, you're going to bump into some people that have toner and you're going to bump into some that have UV inkjet. And of course, they're going to focus on the advantages of each of those. We offer both. So we like to believe that we can be more objective and help guide our customers and our prospects into the right solution that's right for their application and thus right for your customer. We mostly participate in that medium to high volume applications. We are not an entry-level provider. I think Konica Minolta and Epson have offered printers in that segment of the market to address that. That's not what we do. We basically catch people at the next level when they come up, or for people who are starting off with a larger opportunity for themselves and thus a larger investment and different level of digital print platform that's required. So that's where we participate. And if you know anything about Xeikon, we're typically not in the commodity markets. That's not what we pursue. That's not what we develop for. We do participate in some of those markets, but it's not our target. It's not our core business. We look for more of the unique applications, industrial applications, and growth applications. And some of those we've been a part of helping to create and grow. So Today, our primary applications where we are either a leader or unique, or in some cases, really, we can be the only solution or only viable solution. And those would be flexible packaging that we talked about, heat transfer, IML, and the inline digital embellishment for labels. Those are the three areas where Xeikon has the most invested in. We have the most success, we have the most interest, and we think our solutions can stand with or above anyone else as far as providing a good solution for you and your customers. So just really quickly on what they are, I just want to touch on a couple. These are our newest presses. This is the Xeikon TX500, and it's with Titan toner. What Titan toner is, and just in a very quick explanation, is dry toner that works like UV inkjet. So it doesn't require coating, it doesn't require lamination, it has the durability of UV inkjet, but the sustainability of toner and the quality of toner. So we're very excited about this. That's our showing that was at Drupa, that press that you see there. It's also going to be at Printing United. We'll get to that in a little bit. And what's interesting about what we're doing with the Titan is we also have it in line with the Kerr's digital metal unit. This is also a brand new product from Kerr's. So it's in line, it's a single pass, a perfect register, it's food safe, it's high quality, it's hot metal foil embellishment solution. And so if you think about what it has taken to do this type of embellishment in the cut sheet world, because you can't really do this with inkjet, and not this type, not 2D, not hot foil. You can do other embellishment with inkjet, different types of inkjet. But for hot foil, 2D, which is the most common embellishment still, and probably will be for a long time, you had the process was either a 2 or 3 step process. If you think of sleeking or any of those similar ones, where you had to re-enter a sheet into a press 2 or 3 times and try and get it in register every time. And so I really don't need to detail that. I think everyone who's familiar with it understands it. This is a single pass, perfect register, whatever is printed, it sticks there. And both Kerr's and us and the marketplace thus far, in our limited exposure, it was just introduced here at Drupa. It'll be the North American debut at Printing United. Every prototype that was built is already sold, so we couldn't even have one for our showroom. But we do have one. We were able to save one for Printing United. That's an example on the right of some of what some of the labels look like when embellished. We also compete in the UV inkjet, as I mentioned. So that on the left is our new Panther UV inkjet, 1200 DPI, which is the state of the industry as far as quality goes for UV inkjet. So now our inkjet is not just for durables, but also for high quality self-adhesive labels that may in the past have required coating or lamination. Now it would not require that with this press. So this was also introduced at Drupa. It will not be at Printing United, but it is being installed in our showroom this week, as a matter of fact. And I can give you an idea how you can see that in a couple of slides from now. And then in that self-adhesive label market that we talked about, this is our most recent entry, our Lion, we call it, the LX3000. And what's unique about this press, it is the 13.3 inches wide, which is the most common length still, width that's printed for digital labels. So on this press, we approach inkjet speeds at 138 feet per minute. Most of the UV inkjets are at around 160. So it's similar throughput and productivity as inkjet, but of course you get the quality and the sustainability of toner. So feel like we've got a lot of those market requirements covered just under these 3 presses. I will just promise to spend just a few seconds on this, but usually when I do introduce it, I get a lot of questions. But in the case of flexible packaging, how it works for us is that we print directly on the thermal laminate, and we're not printing on the material itself, and then the thermal laminate gets adhered to the base stock, and that's how the pouch is made. This is a unique capability that Xeikon has. We had an idea on why just do that for flexible pouching. Can we do that on folding cartons? Can we do it on book covers? The answer is yes. This is something that's really we're trying to develop the market in. There's a lot of interest in it. When I had one slide about this at the Inkjet Summit, it was the only thing that people just could not stop asking questions about it. So I'm glad to field questions on this as well too, if you wanted to learn more about it. Sustainability has always been important for Xeikon. We did not jump on a bandwagon, and we might have built the wheels, is a good way to put it. Our toner has always had no VOCs and no PFAs, etc. So we try and take all of this very seriously, again, with the equipment manufactured in Europe, and it's still about our, by slight amount, our largest market, where we're catching up to them in North America. Most of this is regulated, so we do a lot to meet the requirements of the EU, and thus there's a lot of benefit for people in the US, even though the requirements are not quite nearly as regulated here yet. But this is one of the things we do, is we provide a scorecard for each of our presses, and this can be helpful to you when presenting your sustainability to either your customers or hopefully not your local authorities as well too. But that's becoming more of an issue. I just wanted to talk very quickly about where you can see Xeikon in the near future. We will be at Printing United. This is a rendering of our booth. That big empty space there is where the TX500 will be with the Kurz unit. If you're planning to come to Printing United, please let myself or more importantly, let Amber Nasser, who's on the call here, let her know, and we'd be glad to arrange a time, a meeting, whatever it is you would be interested to see at the show. But we will be printing the live embellishments with the Kurz unit. I can tell you from Drupa, the interest was extremely high, and we don't expect anything less than that here. We are also in Label Expo, but we're taking a different approach to that. We are in the Label Expo show event, but we're in a shared booth with our parent company, Flink Group. We are not showing any equipment at the show. However, we have our showroom 25 minutes away from Rosemont, and we have all of our presses there. So we thought it would be a good idea to have a kind of VIP event on the day before Label Expo. Wendy will be there. And as members of GAA, you're all invited. Any of you are invited. And again, reach out to Amber or let Wendy or Amber know that you would be interested to attend. And we will have, as I mentioned, our newest presses there. Our division president will be there. Our management team will be there. We'll be running all of the presses and applications. And we even left an hour at the end of the day to have a few drinks and have some fun too. So hopefully some of you can make it. Anyone from Wendy, anyone who's a member of the Alliance, of course, is invited. Just let us know in advance so we can be ready for you. It's Monday, September the 9th, starting at 1 p.m. The first 45 minutes or so is more like open house, but around 1:45, we start with a program and a tour and to see all of the presses running. We also have partners there that will be doing presentations, and that includes Kurz, that includes Cloud Labs for e-commerce, that includes UPM for materials, and then Lois Ritterossi will be there with some interesting information and presentation regarding how to enter this market from a sales perspective. And I think that's it. Yeah, so thank you for this opportunity. Truly, we're happy and honored to be members of Graphic Arts Alliance. Thank you, Wendy, for all of the work to help get us there, and thank you for this opportunity. If you want to reach out to us for any further questions, or if you want us to do anything specific for your organizations, we're glad to do that. If you wanted to meet at any of the shows or attend the VIP event, here's my email address. Amber's is on there. She's probably the best person to reach out to, particularly for the events. And if you have any other questions, general questions, please reach out to her or myself. We're glad to help, and we would enjoy meeting you and having some further communication. So thanks again, and best wishes to everybody going forward.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for a great presentation. I learned so much. And just a reminder to all of our GAA members on the call and on the replay as well that we do have a special program with Xeikon. So be sure to check out your contract summary or log into your member portal to learn all the details of our partnership with Xeikon and how you can take advantage of the benefits there. And certainly, if you are going to be at Printing United or at Label Expo, be sure you stop by the booth. And chat with their team there. Let them know you are in Graphic Arts Alliance as well. If you do have some questions for those of you that are live, feel free to unmute or put them in the chat. And Mark, I'm going to be hopping on that bandwagon with everyone else. So, what is the advantage of the application straight to laminate versus direct to the substrate? I'm very curious what the benefit would be to putting the printing on the laminate versus the substrate.
Ah, yeah, for flexible. Yeah, so there's a few. So I mentioned if we think, let's think folding carton or book covers. And those today, or of course always, they're printed on heavyweight material. And heavyweight material can be printed on most digital presses, but usually there's some type of penalty on throughput or difficulty. It's not the easiest thing to print on. And there's also a limitation, right? We have a limitation, our competitors have a limitation, whether they're the same or not, almost doesn't matter. There is a limitation. So printing on the thermal laminate, the laminate is thin. So you
Okay.
can print, so you have the full maximum productivity of the press. And then we're printing on like we reverse print onto it, and then that actually gets attached to it. So the toner is like a sandwich in there. So it's automatically now
So it's sealed
protected.
in.
Yeah, it's sealed in, and we were really surprised that we just were hoping, oh, we hope there's no deterioration in quality, but we were really surprised. You could almost say that the quality is improved because of that, because some of those surfaces for cartons, for board, they're durable, but they're not the easiest thing to print on, and there's some variables. Anyone who does that knows that. Same thing even for book covers, right? So that's one of the advantages. There are a couple of them. It really opens up. If I wanted something to be literally on like 32 point, then I can print it on the thin film and just mount it to the plain unprinted thick board. So that's kind of you get a little more press productivity, and it opens up the ability to work on heavier weight papers, maybe even a little bit easier. We think there might be some more protection offered as well. That will come out
Yes.
over time as a lot of people do this and we learn more about it, but that's something we believe will also be an advantage.
Sounds great. I love it. So, for those of you out there, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great opportunity to partner with Xeikon. We're really thrilled to have them in the GAA partnership family. I know that our members are really going to benefit if they do partner with Xeikon in purchasing their equipment. They're going to get a lot of really great production improvements and just have a really great relationship with their team because they're an excellent company to work with. So again, we're thrilled to have them. They will be back for future webinars. We're going to snag them again, hopefully talking a little bit more about the commercial side. Oh, actually, and we did get a question here from Hamza. Hamza asked, you mentioned the durability of UV inkjet, but I've noticed on our UV inkjet wide format press on flexible material, it becomes brittle and cracks. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and hi, Hamza, how you doing? It's not, and like anything, not all UV inkjet is alike, and how it's developed for each application, right? So wide format inkjet nozzles, the ink itself, etc., not necessarily exactly the same. I don't want to lead anyone to believe that it's never an issue on a UV inkjet press for labels, whether ours or our competitors, but I would say that the amount, how often, or the likelihood of it is much lower. But you're right. Occasionally, when you have a heat curing, if it's not right, if it's not done in harmony with the substrate, etc., that can be one of the challenges of it. And that's one of the reasons we developed Titan, because we feel like it takes that out of the equation, because we don't have to do that curing of it. And Titan toner not only allows that to happen, but it also, for flexible packaging, we can now print on paper. because it's direct. And that is a significant high level of interest. It's not yet in the market because it's a new capability, but we think Titan is really going to be a rival to UV inkjet, particularly with the capability to print on paper. Couldn't do that with UV inkjet for food because of the migration issues. So yeah, it's an issue, but I think it's a different level issue when you look at a label press versus a wide format printer.
Great, excellent. Thank you, Hamza. So without further ado, in the interest of time, again, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. Be sure to pass this on. I love kind of putting out there to do these as lunch and learns with your team. You can have everyone order pizza or have a brown bag lunch and feature one of our GAA webinars to get your team up to speed with the latest technologies and innovations in the print and graphics industry. So thank you again, Mark. Thank you, Amber, for a great presentation today, and we will look forward to having you back here soon.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Look
Wendy.
forward to meeting everybody. Thank you so much.
You guys.
Thanks.
Well,
Bye-bye.
bye.